is now happening. It is all yours, and I'm out of here.
Good morning, everyone. I have a short reading today, a quote, and Angelica's title is Bridge Over Troubled Waters, and this relates kind to that. So I'm going to invite you, since it is a short reading, I'm going to invite you to take this thought into your consciousness and see if there's different ways you can embrace this idea in your own life. And after the minute of silence of contemplation, then Jackson will take us into the invocation. So right now, I just invite you to get comfortable in your chair. If it feels right, close your eyes. Take a couple of centering breaths and align yourself with the one life. And this is from Kristen Hunter. First, it is necessary to stand on your own 2 feet. But the minute a man finds himself in that position, the next thing he should do is reach out his arms.
There's a bigger picture than I can see. An invisible hand is guiding me. There's a silent voice from deep in my soul, ever reminding me I am whole.
And we are all whole within the one life, with the power and the presence of spirit that engages in everything we do.
Bless you.
We are supported. We are guided and guarded. And I know that we come together and we are bridges over troubled waters for each other. And I know we hold out our hands, our arms, our hearts, and embrace all humanity, all creation, knowing that the best is yet to come. And we walk in that truth and we move. Our decisions are based in it, and our hearts and minds are open to all the possibilities of how great this country, this world, this very essence can be. And so knowing that we come together in heart and mind, I simply let this service unfold in its right and perfect way. And so it is.
There's a bigger picture than I can see. An invisible hand is guiding me. There's a silent voice from deep in my soul, ever reminding me I am whole.
Thank you, Susan and Jackson. As Susan said, my talk is Bridge Over Troubled Waters. And I have been thinking a lot about this since reading it earlier this week, that's what the talk title is. And it seems like the whole world is having troubled waters at the moment. Our country certainly is having troubled waters. And in fact, I remember myself saying not long ago that it felt like there was, with every day, this barrage of news that comes out of, that comes across to us, whether we watch the news or not, if we're on Facebook or somebody will talk to us or whatever, there always seems to be this breaking news. And it's always something kind of crazy, at least for me. And I remember telling somebody that I felt like I had PTSD from the constant barrage of negativity that is going on at this particular time in our country's history. And then I did a workshop about trauma in alignment with this idea. And I came to an understanding for myself anyway, that there's two ways that trauma affects me. One is it either creates amnesia, where I just don't remember the experience, or it causes me to create a wall around myself to protect myself from getting hurt anymore. And the problem with the wall is that the only feeling that it will let out is anger. So I thought maybe that we've been doing work on our country, praying for our country to be more balanced, to be more peaceful and compassionate and kind and all of that. And then I remembered, oh yeah, it has to start with each one of us. So Friday night I listened to a talk by a friend who lives in Hawaii. Her name is Nancy Shipley Rubin. She spoke to my church in Vancouver. I'm not sure. I think she might have come to Baltimore, but I don't remember. But she's a really good speaker and just gets right to the point of things. And one of the things that she talked about was that this particular time in our personal histories is a time for opening the feeling body. And, that struck home for me because, like I said, I've realized that in myself, I either don't remember something when it happens, or I try to protect myself, getting angry easily and stuff. And so that, I'm trying to prevent myself from feeling all the things that are going on. And the one thing, if I'm in protection or I'm in amnesia, I do not experience the level of love and compassion and graciousness and all the things that the divine is. I don't feel that connection with the divine as much as I would like to. So I thought maybe perhaps what we ought to do is work on ourselves a little bit. So one of the things that always seems to help is forgiveness. And forgiveness is healing. And there's so many cultures that do healing and forgiveness work together as a community. You've experienced Wayne Kealohi Powell when he has done his Ho'oponopono circles for us. And we've heard about the various native cultures that also have circles where they put the person in the middle of the circle and they keep reminding the person of how valuable they are and how really good they are, etc. So because we're inextricably connected, like we were talking about last week, and we are reflections of the divine, how do we become that bridge over troubled waters for our own personal healing and the healing of our communities, the healing of our country? How can we build bridges of unconditional acceptance for one another and for ourselves? I used to have this affirmation that I used a lot, and something would happen and it wouldn't feel good, and instead of getting into it and stewing over it and causing that monkey mind thing to go on where I just thought about it, I just went, oh well. And that was my affirmation. Oh, well, for me, it meant that was that, but this is now. And where am I in the now moment? You know, Dr. Holmes says that we believe the ultimate goal of life to be a complete freedom from all discord of every nature, and that this goal is sure to be attained by all. And when I was looking up stuff for this talk, I thought about this quote, and I thought about the fact that it doesn't seem like we're even close to having the complete freedom from all discord of every nature. And yet, one of the things that came to my mind was life always seems to get worse before it gets better. If you think about challenges that you've had in your life, they always seem to get worse before they get better. So maybe that's the period that we're in right now, is where it's all coming up in our faces. Everything is coming up in our faces. And it's coming up so that we can have complete freedom from it, so that we can heal it in the ways that we know how to do that, and move forward into this new reality that we're all creating. We're creating it right now. And if I look at the collective consciousness right now, that's not necessarily what I want my new reality to look like when I come out of when we come out of this shelter in place thing. Totally. I want my new reality to be a place where there is so much kindness going on everywhere, where there's so much compassion going on everywhere, where we realize that everybody thinks differently. Nobody thinks exactly like we do. Everybody thinks differently, and that's okay, as long as no one is harmed. So I have 3 ideas here. The first one, going back to this whole idea of the PTSD and living in sort of a collective trauma, I thought a good question for us to ask, and actually Nancy Shipley Rubin in her talk asked this on Friday night: what are my unmet needs? To explain that a little bit more, most of you know that I had a very interesting childhood. And so one of my unmet needs as a child was that I wanted to know and feel what it was like to be loved. I knew what it was like to be unloved, and I can't move forward from that place. That, as Jesus said, you can't put new wine in an old wineskin, right? I had to change my consciousness so that I could move forward and get my unmet needs met. So my question for myself, or I had to realize, what is it that I want? And so I wanted to know and feel what it was like to be loved. So one of the ways that I did it, and one of the ways that we can all do it, is realize where in our lives are we withholding love from others? Where are we withholding compassion from others? Where is it what is it in us that is calling for forgiveness? I remember years ago, I think with Reverend Helen Street, she was really on the idea of forgiveness for a while. And some of us started calling it the F word because it was like, no, not that again, right? But anyway, so what would happen if we were to set aside real or imagined injuries and behave as we did before that experience happened? What would happen if we were to return to the love that was the original source of who we really are? What would happen if we would actually allow us to forgive somebody, forgive our parents, our past spouses or boyfriends or girlfriends, best friends maybe that we felt betrayed by? Where is it in our life that we need to do our forgiveness in order to have our unmet needs met. Would we be willing to really listen to that voice within us that has been telling us forever what it is that we need to do to move forward in our lives? And what are our unmet needs? So obviously, number 2, forgiveness is an inside job. Nobody can forgive for us. We have to do our own forgiveness work. And I thought about that. Well, what does that feel like? Well, I remember Shakti Gwain had this process years and years ago for forgiveness, where every day for 70 days, you had to write down, no, every day for 7 days, you had to write down 70 times, I forgive, and you put the person's name there. And I decided at one point that I needed to forgive my mother. So I wrote down, I started writing, and as I was writing, these things would come up in me, memories. And I started calling them bubbles, memory bubbles. And I realized that in order to pop those bubbles, I had to acknowledge them and write them down. So Shakti Gwain had said, just write, I forgive my mother, I forgive my mother, I forgive my mother. But instead I said, I forgive my mother for, and I would write down the little memory bubble as succinctly as possible. And I did that every day for 7 days. And at the end of that time, I had sort of been hoping that something magical was going to happen. My mother would call me, or, something would happen that would show me that this had worked. And it was a really interesting thing that I called my father's house. Now, my parents had been separated for a long time, or divorced. And I called my father's house one day, and this woman answered, and she asked me, who is this? When I asked for my father, and I said, this is his daughter. And I said, who is this? And she said, this is your mother. So I got the opportunity to talk to her, which I hadn't done in like 12 years. And in that very short conversation that we had, there was a connection. And I realized, indeed, that 7-day process that I did had had an effect. So all of us not only need to seek forgiveness in ourselves for others, but we also need to seek self-forgiveness. And self-forgiveness is a means of self-healing. In fact, I think it's a spiritual practice. When I was in the foster home, my foster mother said, you don't ever go to bed without forgiving anybody that hurt you today. And that really becomes a spiritual practice, if you think about it. So, and doing self-forgiveness, doing forgiveness for those that we believe have hurt us in some way, and this becomes a contribution to the collective consciousness. Everything that we do for ourselves also lifts up the consciousness of humanity. And this consciousness can use every single one of us doing our own inner work. So I asked myself, have I really deeply forgiven those that I think have hurt me? One way to tell if you have, like if you're like me and you've done years and years and years of forgiveness work, one way to tell if you have or not is you'll find yourself in a conversation with someone, and maybe you're talking about a person and you find yourself gritting your teeth, or your muscles get really tight and you feel that either anxious or betrayed, or some of that old feeling comes back up that you thought you had gotten rid of. And when I think about that, I realize that forgiveness is not only an inside job, it's a job that happens at the level we're willing to do it to. So maybe at the first time you forgive somebody, you're only willing to forgive them so much. And then you get to do it again because something else comes up, or something inside of you, a memory comes up and it bothers you. So you do it again, and then you've done it a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, until you can think of that person and they have safe passage through your mind. I love that phrase, safe passage through your mind. So the third one is that love can build a bridge. Doing this work, this inner spiritual work, is loving ourselves at a level perhaps we haven't loved ourselves before. So when we practice compassion with ourselves, we're better able to practice compassion for others. When the power of love is part of this greater consciousness. In fact, God is love. So as we allow ourselves to do our spiritual work, the bridge not only becomes loving and kindness to other people, but it becomes loving kindness to our inner spirit, to that powerful presence within us. And as we all do our work together, it becomes even more powerful. And so what is this love? What is this love? To me, when I think about this unconditional love of the divine, this love that we're working toward having to build these bridges, it's a feeling of expansion, a feeling of warmth. There's no judgment in it. It's just there, supportive and nurturing. We go from having a feeling that there's something missing in our lives to a recognition that everything we need is right here. Everything. In our minds and in our hearts. And this idea of the trauma that I was talking about in the beginning, this has caused us to close down our hearts so that we won't be so vulnerable. But if we do our inner work, if we really choose to make a commitment, it takes a commitment to do the kind of work that I believe is necessary in the world today and in our own lives. If we make this commitment, we're awakening our spiritual body, and that thing that we thought was missing, that we couldn't really name, that thing disappears. We no longer have an emptiness in part of us. And love builds a bridge. So I'm going to ask you this week to allow yourself to awaken to make a commitment to really waking up that spiritual aspect of you, that spiritual awareness that who you are is God in form. And to listen to your heart with a willingness to learn something new. I was thinking about what this sheltering in place has done for me. And it has meant that I have learned a lot of new things. I mean, I've learned how to do Zoom. I've learned that I'm more creative than I think I am. I've learned that that even though we're not in a building surrounding surrounded by a building, even though we're not able to give hugs and all of that, that there is so much love in our community and so much generosity in our community. So every day I want to allow myself to open up to learning something new. And this is what I want to invite you to do as well. And in this learning something new and awakening your spiritual body, allowing yourself to really listen to your heart, what you're going to do is embrace the power of a love field. We're all energy, right? We've talked about that a bajillion times. We're all energy. And the energy that we want to be is the energy of love. This is the energy that we are. And so let's really embrace that. Embrace that field of love. And in doing the embracing, we trust the powers of spirit. We absolutely trust. If I'm standing in my wounded self, I'm standing in wounded energy. So my job personally is to continually move out of that and to be standing in the God energy. Because this is real. The God energy is real. It helps us forgive instantly like children do, not hold something for years. It helps us build the bridges between each other and between, people we don't even know. It helps us realize what our unmet needs are and allows us to fulfill them because we're no longer in that trauma space of either amnesia or having a wall built around us. This is our job. So I'm going to say to us today, let's commit to do inner work, do the inner work so that we might lift the collective consciousness of our spiritual family, of our local family, of the entire planet. Let's build a bridge to bring compassion and kindness in order that we may all enjoy peace and freedom from discord. If that feels good to you, then I invite you, when we do our treatment in a bit, to make this commitment. But first of all, I want to share with you a Buddhist prayer. I'm sure that you've heard it many times before. Most of us have. But I'm going to read this. I just want you to close your eyes for a minute. And let's just think this. I'll read this and you let these words come into you. So take a breath. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings be happy. May all beings be safe. May all beings awaken to the light of their true nature. May all beings be free. And say this affirmation with me that Claudia has written. I recognize that the world is both troubled and healing. It is my intention to participate in the wellness of the world, consciously contributing to a better life for all. And let's go into prayer. So gratefully, I acknowledge the truth of my being. And just like I was speaking the I in my talk, I was doing that to share a story that helps us learn. And in treatment, I use the I for all of us to embody this treatment easier. So I declare that I know that there is only one life. That life is God's life. And that life is the life that I am living right now. And as I think about God, I think about all the qualities of God. that I've assigned to it. Compassion, love, kindness, power, light, beauty, wisdom. And as I think about these qualities, I let myself realize that those qualities are within me as well, because God is within me. I am in the universe and the universe is in me. And so how grateful I am to know this. And I choose right now to allow myself to commit to experiencing my spiritual nature to a greater degree than I ever have before. And in order to do this, I reveal what must be healed. I let myself look at my unmet needs, and I declare what it is that I want. And I move forward along this wonderful spiritual path called life, knowing that I have a helper, a not so silent helper, if I open my mind to hear. The universe takes my innermost desires and opens me up to a whole new vista before me, so that those desires are met with ease and grace. And so I celebrate this. I celebrate recognizing the powerful presence within me. I celebrate knowing that there is work to do, and I celebrate my willingness to do the work. Who I am is more powerful than I have ever thought I was. Who I am has all the attributes that I have given to God, the divine, within me. Who I am is a being of light and love and law. And so I speak my word into the law, declaring that from this point forward, I experience life in a more delightfully divine way than I ever have before. And because I am willing to forgive, to let go, to surrender, to allow the universe to live life in me, as me, through me, everything changes for the highest and best. And so knowing this, I declare that in some way I have been changed this morning. And I'm grateful for it, as I recognize that there are many bridges over troubled waters, and I get to choose the one I want to be on, and I get to choose the one I want to be. So gratefully, I acknowledge the presence and power of the divine within each of us. And I release these words into the law, knowing they are so, and so it is.